In this video, we will talk about the graphs of the basic sine and cosine functions. The graphs of both sine and cosine functions represent up and down curves called sinusoidals. To graph these functions in the rectangular coordinate system, we can plot as many points as desired, then, by connecting these points, we can get the graph. Once we understand the shape of these graphs, we can just plot a total of 5 points over a period of 2 pi and then connect these points to form the graphs. Here to the left we have the unit circle, and we know that in one full rotation we have 2 pi radians. 2 pi also represents the period for both sine and cosine functions. Here to the right, let's start by graphing the sine function. On the x-axis, we will plot 5 points, and they will be 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So here we have them, and now at these points we will find the value of sine. For this we will use the unit circle, and we know that on the unit circle, sine is represented by the y-coordinate of each of these points. So at 0, the value of sine is 0, at pi over 2, the value of sine is 1, at pi is 0, at 3 pi over 2 is negative 1, and at 2 pi is 0. So again, at 0, the value of sine is 0, and this will be the first point on the graph. Now, at pi over 2, sine has the largest value, and this value is 1. So to plot this point from pi over 2, we will move up 1 unit. Now, at pi, the value of sine is 0. So here on the x-axis, we will have another point. Then at 3 pi over 2, the value of sine is negative 1. So then from 3 pi over 2, we will move down 1. Then at 2 pi, the value of sine is again 0. Now, once we have these 5 points, we will connect them to form the graph. So here we have it, and this graph will continue to the left and to the right indefinitely. And because the period of this function is 2 pi, this means that the function will repeat itself every 2 pi units. And this means that to the right of 2 pi, the graph again will go up and then down and then back to the x-axis. So we can say that in this function, x represents the values of angles in radians, which are also real numbers, and y represents the value of sine. Now, here are some characteristics of this function. The domain of this function is negative infinity to positive infinity, and this means that the graph will continue to the left and to the right indefinitely. The range is negative 1 to positive 1 inclusive. This means that the graph will stay in this range from negative 1 to positive 1, and there will be no graph above 1 and no graph below negative 1. The amplitude, which also represents the highest value for y, is equal to 1. The period of this function is 2 pi, and over this period, the function crosses the x-axis at 0, pi, and 2 pi. Also, over this period, the maximum value of the function is at pi over 2, and that is 1, and the minimum value is at 3 pi over 2, and that is negative 1. Now, it's time to graph the cosine function. Just like with the sine function, along the x-axis, we will plot 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Now, on the unit circle, the values of cosine are represented by the x-coordinates of these points. So, at 0, cosine is 1, at pi over 2, cosine is 0, at pi, cosine is negative 1, at 3 pi over 2 is 0, and at 2 pi is 1. So again, because at 0 the value of cosine is 1, the first point will be here on the y-axis. Then at pi over 2, cosine is 0, at pi is negative 1, at 3 pi over 2 is 0, and at 2 pi is 1. Now I will connect these points to have the graph. So here we have the graph, and this graph also continues to the left and to the right indefinitely. Now let's see some characteristics of this function. Just like as the sine function, the domain is negative infinity to positive infinity, the range is -1 to +1, and the amplitude is 1. Again, this 1 represents the maximum value of the function. The period of the function is 2 pi, and over this period, the function crosses the x-axis at pi over 2 and at 3 pi over 2. Over this period, we have a maximum value of 1 at 0 and at 2 pi. And at pi, we have a minimum value of -1. It is very important to know how to tell apart these two graphs of the basic sine and cosine functions. Remember that sine crosses the origin and cosine crosses the y-axis at 1. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and thank you for watching.